Welcome to this week's episode of Listen to Your Coaches. I'm your coach, Mike Wilkins, here with Coach Will Morrill. This week, we're going to talk about the MMA scoring system, adjustments we'd like to make, how we would change it, and how it really should be done. Will, why don't you get us started?
All right, so first of all, we're going to just talk about what the unified rules are. So when you're watching the UFC or any MMA in the United States, so excluding ONE FC, that's a little bit different. What are the scoring criteria? How is it scored? And really, that's what we're going to dive into. So in the unified rules, we have what's called a 10-point must system, which means that the winner of the round gets 10 points and the loser usually gets 9, sometimes 8. They even have a 7 in there,
yeah.
But I've personally never seen one. So
yeah,
don't know how it works.
Right.
So just to kind of give you the overall gist of things, to be a 10-9, you have to win the round, but it could still be very close, right? So
correct.
A 10-9 round where I win by a very small margin is still scored the exact same as if I win by a decent margin, but you're not going to get finished or anything. So already we could potentially see some issues there.
Right.
But that's the common scoring that you're going to see is 10-9 for most rounds. You can get a 10-8, and the way that I think it kind of gets interpreted is if you could have been finished during that round. So, maybe a guy gets taken down and ground and pounded really badly, and the ref's right there, maybe about to stop it, but the guy gets through. That could be a 10-8 round. But again, that's one of the problems. Who really knows? So scoring criteria. This is what the judges are looking for to come up with that 10-8 or 10-9 rather. Or either one of those, is number one, effective striking and grappling. And the way they define that is within striking, the immediate damage counts more than cumulative damage. So if I land 10 punches on Mike and by the 8th and 9th one he's starting to get a little bit hurt, that is scored less so than if Mike lands 2 or 3 big punches on me and I'm all wobbled and hurt badly. And I do think that makes sense,
right?
To a degree. If you land 100 punches and the guy is about to get knocked out and the other guy lands one shot that just kind of has the dude wobbled, I don't know, but we'll dive into that. Another thing that's important that I think we're going to talk about a lot is the way they define effective striking and grappling, particularly grappling. Takedowns are not defined as or not counted and scored as just taking your opponent down and, changing that position, but also doing damage or getting to a position where you're going to submit or do damage on the ground. So, you take someone down, they stand right back up, even if it's within, 10 seconds or whatever. They don't, by the rules, really count that as much, which is crazy because over the years, sometimes, there have been times, especially in the late 2000s or 2010s rather.
So they wouldn't count that as effective grappling?
At least significantly less, but it's not super. I mean, if you read the rules there, it's not super clear, which is one of the massive issues with this, is it's not clear, and fighting in general is just a subjective thing. But we can dive into that. If the striking and effective grappling are deemed equal,
yes,
then you move on to the next criteria, which is aggressiveness.
Effective aggressiveness.
And that's the key word, effective. So if you're moving forward, they define it as trying to end the fight, basically.
Yeah, you're making the offensive attempts.
Right. So if I'm just moving forward and getting beat up the whole time, that's not counted as effective aggressiveness, right?
No.
And then the last criteria, I believe, is ring control, right?
Yep.
And
fighting area control.
Right. Which I'm going to have a lot of problems with because as someone who likes to move backwards and side to side and set traps, I don't think that's always viewed correctly. But that is the last criteria if effective aggressiveness is.
Well, I would say that that's just the judge's interpretation on it. Then I would see someone exhibiting, if it came down to fighting area control, I would see someone as setting traps as maybe leading that. You know what I mean? What's the difference between me pushing you forward or pulling you backwards?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the problem is a lot of judges don't know what they're looking at. But.
Yeah, but also with that being said, fighting area control doesn't even become a criteria unless the striking and grappling was even, and the aggressiveness was also even, which if the aggressiveness was also even, how are you determining the aggressiveness? Is it by forward motion Well, then you would already lose on the aggressiveness.
So
there.
in the rules, it says they define aggressiveness as trying to end the fight. So the way I would interpret that is if you have a guy who's stepping back, hucking a big right hand, stepping back, hucking a big right hand, and another guy who's just kind of like slipping inside, but constantly moving forward, I would give that to the guy throwing the punches, right? Even though he's the one who's, moving backwards, which might look less aggressive. So yeah, that's basically, the overall scoring system without diving too deep into any particular details. So let's talk about that.
Let's talk.
Where do you see some problems? And
you might have to take the lead on this because if the scoring system is being scored as outlined here, I pretty much agree with it.
Okay, I don't.
To certain extents. No. Yeah, I agree with it. I like the scoring system.
So there's two problems with it. One is how judges actually interpret it, because we know by the rules that's not always how it gets judged. We can talk about that. The other thing, and I think I'm going to get you to agree with this, is the way that they define effective grappling, I think is a little bit off. So what I don't think people understand is, like, let's say that Mike blasts a takedown on me, like a real crazy double leg, runs through, takes me down, and then I immediately stand up, right? Like I just like fall to a hip and immediately I'm right back up. It's that, I don't think that should count as nothing. I think that takedown matters, because in my mind that's damaging, whether it hurts or not, or looks like it hurts. One, that's like physically, I'm getting put down and have to stand up, which takes energy and does do to a degree some damage, similar to like a body shot or something. And also psychologically, you know what I mean? Like I think that's an aggressive thing, and perhaps maybe that's not what they're looking for. But if all else was equal, I would definitely weight that a little bit more heavily than they're weighting it here. The other thing is they're talking about control on the ground, and I can't believe I'm arguing this side, but they don't really count control if it's not leading towards a finish, which obviously we all want to see. But the way I interpret those rules is that I could land 10 strikes on you that are kind of hard, and like you're wearing them and you're not like, clearly don't like those, but you're not like hurt by them. And then you could take me down for like the last 3 minutes of the round, and maybe you're just in like top guard, and you're like just doing enough, touching the body and acting like you're gonna pass so that they don't stand us up. But by those rules, I should win because I landed those strikes, and I think that 3 or 4 minutes of control time.
See, I don't read it that way.
Really?
I read it the opposite.
Yeah.
Like I would read it that me with the takedown and the 3 minutes of control time on top would establish that my effective grappling overtook your effective striking.
Right, but there's a part in there where they say that if you go to where like they talk about takedowns, and they say that takedown like only matters if you're using that position to get closer to ending the fight, basically.
Which I would agree is.
I do agree.
Even to take down the guard is getting closer to ending the fight.
Okay, but what if you never pass and you never do any like significant damage from there?
I'm still closer to ending the fight than I was.
What if I throw up 3 or 4 submissions? They kind of get shut down pretty quick, but I'm the one who's trying to end the fight, and you're very clearly trying to lay and pray.
Well, then you would have the more effective grappling.
Okay. All right. So by the rules.
Yeah, so I don't have an issue with the rules.
Okay. Now, what about interpretation of the rules? Because that's something that has been a little bit screwy as of late.
So now interpretation of the rules, I don't know how you without applying a straight up scoring system, I don't know how you interpret it or how you assign the interpretation, right?
I'm going to give you an example. So did you see Shevchenko and, I want to say
Grasso?
Maybe.
No. The girl who just beat her? The girl who's the current champ?
I don't believe that's the fight I'm thinking of, but there's one round in particular. It was pretty close. Where
I didn't see the fight.
Shevchenko has her back taken, and she's landing punches like this, and the other girl's not really doing a lot with that back control. And I believe they gave Shevchenko that round.
Oh, that should be impossible.
So like right there, that by the letter of the rules is like, oh, this person who's in a dominant position didn't do anything with it and was being attacked, even though
didn't do anything with it? I'm on your back, therefore I've done something with it. You are at the highest. So the only way that I can still win by getting your back is to finish.
Or I think
So now the
going
dominant
for the
position
chokes.
is not awarded, it's the actual finish. So if you get there, it doesn't matter anymore. You have to finish since it's a finishing position.
If I remember correctly,
That would then, in turn, eliminate every strike landed that wasn't a knockout.
yeah.
So
Again,
now everything's a tie.
if I'm remembering this, that's something else we should talk about. Is I think there should be more ties on rounds. But if I'm remembering this fight correctly, the other girl had Shevchenko's back and was pretty much just like seatbelt grip, just hanging on backpack and like not literally like doing nothing and getting hit. So then it's like you have the most dominant position and then someone who's being aggressive from an extremely bad position. And we all know that like those punches
I
aren't
didn't
gonna
see the
finish
fight.
Dude, I'm remembering this poorly anyway, so maybe this is a bad example. But
I mean, my thing is like, I guess if someone was just holding on to the back and not attempting to finish, and then they were getting hit, I mean, you would have to be getting hit a lot for it to overcome. And at that point, like, it's still a tough call.
yeah, it is. Okay, so then let me ask you this, because obviously we've seen some bad
So I would
decisions.
consider that like an outlier.
Yeah, oh, for
situation.
sure, for sure.
So I don't think you can come up with a perfect scoring system.
Oh, I mean, dude, again, fighting is so subjective that, like, I don't think that's possible. But, I'm just trying to figure out what we can do to make it better. So let me ask you this then. In the decisions you've seen that maybe don't go the way that you wanted them to, what went wrong? Like, what have you seen in MMA judging that's not great?
So I can't remember the fight exactly, but I remember the situation where the fight was believed to be tied 1-1, and I believe it ended up that it was tied 1-1 going into the third. And in the third round, one of the fighters got a takedown and did nothing with the takedown, right? Just held the position. The bottom fighter also did nothing, right? But won the fight because it was like, oh, well, he got the takedown and didn't do anything. Like, well, the bottom guy didn't do anything. And then there was no striking exchanges. The striking exchanges prior were also even. So it wasn't like, oh, fighter B outstruck fighter A. Fighter A got the takedown and prayed it out for the last 3 minutes. It was even striking, a takedown, and both laid it out for the last 3 minutes.
Right.
So in my interpretation, right, like, could you win that fight after getting taken down and held down for 3 minutes? Yeah, if you outstruck the person enough prior to it. But there was no outstriking the other person enough, and it was just so widely accepted because they're like, yeah, he didn't do anything from top. He didn't do anything from top. And like, yeah, you have to do stuff from top, but you can't win because the other person did nothing.
Right.
You have to do something too. You know what I mean? And like the fighter on the bottom also was doing nothing, was kind of hoping for stand-up.
And I think that's kind of a trend we're seeing a little bit right now where they're like very much disincentivizing, lay and pray.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, obviously we don't want to see fights like that. But at the same time, in that example, that the top guy should have won.
Yeah.
And even by that criteria, because again, even if we're not counting that takedown as effective grappling, which I think it should be.
The takedown should be counted as effective grappling because, and I'm not seeing where it's not being accounted. I'm not seeing that.
Hold on, there's a very specific part in there.
I'm interpreting it differently. Top paragraph near the bottom.
Yeah. Excuse you,
it's like immediate or...
Yeah, it should be noted that a successful takedown is not merely a changing of position, but the establishment of an attack from the use of the takedown. Top and bottom fighters are assessed more on the impact/effective result of their actions, more so than their position. Which I agree, because if you're just hanging out in top guard, then and someone's throwing up submissions, this guy who's throwing up submissions, that should matter more so than the position. But I do think the position should matter. And maybe they're arguing that works down into aggression or ring control.
Well, I think like the takedown did make an impactful and effective result on the action.
That's what I'm trying to argue.
Regardless of what happens after it. No, and this is how I'm reading it too. You just read it to me the same way I read it.
Okay.
Right? So like, you say it has to lead towards an effort towards finishing.
Yes.
Right? I think any time that I have taken you down, the position has changed. Therefore, there's an effort towards finishing. I think what the wording here is trying to do is, so we get frustrated at this, where someone gets on like the tail, or not the tail of the tape, like the fight metric score, they get notched a takedown. You're like, dude, that wasn't a takedown. they put the other person like on their butt, but they never established control. Like if that was wrestling, there'd be no two.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the guy, like, you know, he didn't secure the takedown, right? You got the single leg, you knocked them down, but they like, you know, like switched through, rolled through, whatever, to where in a wrestling match, it'd just be like no takedown. It'd be like, oh, that was a good scramble. This guy attempted a takedown. This guy used some scrambling, you know, during the attempt to defend it. And defending a takedown doesn't mean, defending a takedown in wrestling doesn't mean that you guys didn't hit the mat.
Right.
You know, it's that the top person didn't establish what is takedown criteria. And I think maybe that's what needs to be more clearly defined. What is takedown criteria? So I think this verbiage allows them through that, right? Like, so like you blast a double on me, I roll it through, and we both end up on our feet, right? On fight metrics, they're scoring that a takedown for you.
Right.
You know, when we know, like, no, that wasn't a takedown in wrestling. That wasn't a takedown, right? So I think that's what this is allowing them to do, is allow them to, as judges, not score that takedown because that takedown didn't happen.
Gotcha.
You know, whereas if we do takedown and we land in closed guard, and then you like shove the head, hip out, clear, get an overhook, and get back to your feet, that takedown does score. That was a 2. You know. Also, like mat returns, right? Like we've seen it happen. I hate how they count those as takedowns on the fight metrics, right? Like someone's down, hits a stand up, and then they get picked up and re-returned to the mat. No, you got to put yourself to a defendable position.
Yes.
If in folk style wrestling, it wouldn't have been awarded an escape, right? Like, because like, yeah, they stand up, right? But until they turn face,
break the hands, turn
face. No, it doesn't necessarily mean breaking contact,
right?
But like turn face, and then you like are considered, like the other person is now considered not in control of the position, right? Then you can rescore another takedown,
right?
You know. So I think the interpretation here, I think that might be the intent of it, of saying it like that. I think maybe it could be explained better.
Yeah.
You know?
I do think when we were going into this before reading these, I was like, man, I'm going to be picking holes in it. I think you're right. I think they do have a pretty good like idea overall. I think that one, the interpretation with the judges where things get screwy, and two, I think that's a great thing is like takedowns should be defined, you know?
Yeah.
And I like taking from wrestling, you know, because again, those mat returns, like counting that as a takedown is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, if the guy's still on your back, it's like.
I mean, we're using all this stuff from all the other sports, but
Right.
like in wrestling, we're not using any of like in wrestling has such a greater, seems to have such a greater impact on the sport, right? Like, you know, like not a lot of people would argue against wrestling being a great base to have coming in, right? Maybe the preferable base to have coming in. But yet we're not using like wrestling, like we'll use jiu-jitsu, we'll use the back and mount as like, oh man, they're in dominant positions now, right? Where'd we get that from? Well, from jiu-jitsu scoring system, right? Those are also scored as the dominant positions, rightfully so, and such. But we're not going to use like takedown criteria from wrestling, you know?
Yeah, no, I think,
But we'll use the 10-point must system and boxing criteria for stand-up.
yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I think that's one big thing that definitely should be improved upon, or at the very least clarified, is what is a takedown, and maybe a little more clarification around like how that takedown
I also
scores.
think that a takedown could be considered an effective strike.
That's what I'm saying. Like even if it doesn't look that bad, like let's say you're looking for a double and then you have to switch to a single and you get a crackdown and the guy literally just kind of like falls and then pops right back up. Like that's impact. You know what I mean? And that's significant in my mind.
Like what if we're fighting, right? And, you know, I go calf kick and it sweeps your leg out and you fall. Everybody knows that scored. Everybody knows that scored. But I didn't maintain control on the ground. It was a strike that knocked you down. It didn't cause much. I'm not talking about like a calf kick, like, pop, you know, like, oh, now I'm limping. I'm talking about like I swept the foot out with the boom and whoop, bang. Everybody knows that scored, right? And it's like, okay, so technically that's a takedown and a strike.
Yeah.
You know? A strong double leg, you know, like think about a GSP double leg running you across the cage. That's a strike,
dude.
You know,
and that particular strike, I think, is like, because it talks about the cumulative versus immediate impact. I think that has a big immediate impact, whether the other fighter shows it or not. Because if you're going shoulder into the body, and you're running through a guy and putting him down,
and then you threw them through the mat,
exactly.
And on top of that, like talk about effective striking and or grappling, right? Like if I freaking slip roll and then counter hook you're gonna be like, man, that was great effective striking,
Mm-hmm.
right? I slip roll, blast a double, right? Like I also stopped you from your offense while forcing my offense.
Yes.
And then I put you in a position where your offense is even more so hindered.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So do you think that
I think takedowns should be scored more than anything.
I think that takedowns should be scored as like a really good strike, you know, even if it doesn't look like it did that much damage. Because, again, I think that psychological factor is really important in fighting. And obviously, there's dudes who are tough and they're just like, whatever, I got taken down, stand up, like no problem. But I just think that's another layer that also matters, in addition to the physical damage and the positional changes that happened. And even if the bottom guy gets up immediately, that positional change happened at one point. You know what I mean? And so, like, I do think that should matter. And I think that currently MMA, I do think there was a time where they were really on wrestlers, and it's like, if you got one takedown, it's just like, that's the round.
Yeah, it was pretty much the round.
And I think that perhaps there's been a bit of an overcorrection, you know what I mean? So hopefully...
Well, that's good, because that's typically how things work, right? Like you set the line and you're like, oh, we're too far to the left here. So then you try to adjust and you over adjust too far to the right. So then you run back and you just keep bouncing past the line, but little by little you just
exactly, and hopefully get it
line.
closer and closer. So yeah, maybe the next couple of years will be an adjustment period that'll make that happen.
Yeah.
So
and
I don't.
This is still new. This sport is still young. This sport,
so
what
new.
You know, like sanctioned as a sanctioned sport, not that long.
So I don't have a huge issue with the way that the criteria is laid out. I do think it should be made more clear, and I'm not sure if I was starting from scratch that I would write it in exactly that way, but I definitely don't dislike it. And I think there's a lot of good stuff there. I think that what it comes down to is kind of, again, the subjective nature of it and how certain judges look at it, but that's more of a personnel thing. Let's dive into a little bit about like the way it's scored. So I think that tie rounds should happen a little bit more often.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times judges kind of feel like I have to choose a winner here.
I agree.
And I think if it's really, really close, like I'm okay with there being like a, whatever we want to call it, 3% margin of error, where you're like, listen, it was 20 to 21 strikes. This guy landed maybe one more head strike. This guy landed one more low kick.
Also, but like as a judge, are you privy to how many strikes were thrown? Because if so, I'm not even sure I like that as a judge, because now you're like, you could just run the stats.
Right, but I don't think they have access to it. Actually, I'm pretty sure they don't. I'm very sure they don't.
Mm-hmm. I am too. I just wanted that.
But I'm just saying, like, if we've all seen rounds and you're like, dude, that was a really close one. I have no idea how I'd score it.
Yeah. Oh my. I have those rounds all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm like, I don't know. They're looking at me like, aren't you the expert? Yeah, I am. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that there's necessarily a problem with making that a tied round. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that, one, we should see more of those. Two, I think that the criteria for a 10-8 round should be a little bit clearer. And if they're not ever going to do 10-7s, why have it in the scores? You know what I mean? Or in the like official rules, based on the current 10-point must system.
What do you think it takes to get a 10-8 round right now?
In my opinion, you should get a 10-8 round, or you do get a 10-8 round if at some point during that round it could have been stopped, or it's like really close to getting to that point.
Now, do you think that's too stringent of a criteria, and we'd be better served if it was a looser criteria? I do.
I think for the 10-point must system, I like having something that we can make a little bit more objective and being like, okay, if this fight is getting close to where it could have been stopped, then like that's what makes it a 10-8. But then also you have to account for like, okay, imagine you're fighting someone, you are winning the striking exchange, not by a crazy margin, you guys not hurt that much, and you take him down, and then for the next 4 minutes you're on his back and you are digging submissions, you're doing damage.
Yeah, and that should be a 10-8 round.
And let's just say you never actually get to a point where you're like, I could finish this, but you're getting really close.
Yeah, but how do you determine, oh, I could finish this, or like I don't know.
I'm saying you never get to a point where you like
have it locked in,
and you're like, I'm gonna squeeze now. You never get to that point, but you're fighting for it. Yeah,
I still think it's a 10-8 round.
I agree. I think that should be a 10-8 round because you're getting closer and you're dominating.
So here goes what I think. I don't like that is typically scored a 10-9 round, and then a fight where like, you barely outstrike me in round one. I run you like a dog round two, and then you barely outstrike me round 3, you win the fight.
Yeah.
Right? Whenever we're like, yo, or more so happens round 1 and 2, you barely outstrike, you just barely edge. So much you're like, who won that round? You know what? The hands were kind of even, but blue landed 3 leg kicks. Boom. Same thing round 2, and then round 3, I take you down, I run you like a dog.
Yeah.
You know, and it gets scored a 10-9 round.
Yeah.
And then you win the fight. Because those rounds 1 and 2 scores are already in. It's not like a judge can be like, oh man, like this dude definitely won the fight, but I'm going to need to change one of the round 2 scores. You can't. They're already in.
So, okay, so you know what? You might be onto something here, and maybe I'm a little off with saying with kind of what the definition of a 10-8 should be. Maybe within a 10-point must system, it should be 10-9 is like you barely won. 10-8 is you won with dominance, and 10-7 is...
That's what I would like it to be. If we're going to run 10-point must system, which I have an argument to make to switch it to cumulative scoring,
we're
running the score up, right? I think that better fits in with other sports. Oh, we're going to get into that. So what I would like to see is like a 10-10 round being incredibly rare, right? Like, dude, just like I cannot bring myself to give someone an advantage here. A 10-9 round being a round that someone won.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, you won that round. You know, a 10-8 round being a round in which either A, you dropped them, B, you got to dominant position and held it. Now that can be reversed too. So like, for example, if I drop you and then you drop me, we're back even. You know, if you drop me, I end up taking your back. We're back even. If I take you down, I got mount, you reverse it, you get mount, we're back even. But I think a position of dominance such as a mount, back control, and drops should all be required of a 10-8 round, but not like you had to get there and like, I can't believe that fight wasn't stopped. Right? I think achieving those, giving it the 10-8 round would be good. And then those rounds that the 10-7 rounds would be what was formerly a 10-8 round. Like, you know, like, ooh,
could have been stopped at some point.
Could have been stopped on that TKO, or ooh, I thought that choke was in. Like whatever would have been scored a 10-8 round under how we currently think of it, that would then be 10-7. And what I like about that is the more diversity in scoring.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that allows for you to lose 2 rounds and still win the fight without a finish.
Right.
You know what
or
I mean?
At the very least tie it. You know?
Or tie it.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you're spot on with that, and I actually go back on what I said before, and I think that's, if you're going to stick with a 10-8, or
if
sorry,
you're going to
10-point
stick with
must,
a 10-point must, yeah.
I think that's a really good way to do it. The one thing I would add on is, and here I am talking about how I hate how subjective this scoring is, about to say something very subjective here. I like your criteria for a 10-8, but I would argue that there needs to be some sort of language just talking about dominance. And what I'm thinking about right now is Gaethje Ferguson. Okay, he didn't drop him. He never got to, you know, back or mount, but like dominance.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
So like, how do we word that so it's less subjective? I don't.
Well, that would still be a 10-8. Wait.
Under your system, I would still say that's a 10-8 because like
it's still a 10-8, and you think it should be a 10-7.
No. I think it should be a 10-8 because it's like, all right.
So you're saying under my system it'd be a 10-9 because there was no drop. So I'm not saying that a round like that cannot be a 10-8. I'm just saying that a round with a drop, a mount, or a back is a 10-8.
Got you.
You know, like if it's one has it and the other doesn't. Right. Like if I got mount that round, you know. Well, and then you get into like length of time.
I was just about to ask you that. Like, you get to mount, and then 2 seconds later, you know, I hip escape.
Well, hey, how about this? In jiu-jitsu, if I get to mount, I need a 3 count before I'm scored. So that way it's not just a quick. So like, you know, like we could like borrow like thinking of it in that criteria, you know? So
I like that. And then I'm just going to throw, again, an outlier at you that maybe pokes a hole in the argument, even though I think this is a really elegant system. Let's say you get to mount and you need 3 seconds. And within 1.5 seconds, you land a monster punch. Right? And that made that mount totally worth it. And I eat that punch and I'm dazed, but I still happen to get out.
Right.
I mean, obviously that counts for then the effective striking and everything. But then like that mount didn't, you know, count. And again, we're getting like...
Well, right, yeah, now,
yeah,
so then I just got a 10-9. So, and then here goes the thing. Again, allowing for the example you gave, damage like effective damage could be a 10-8 round too.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like it's just like mount, back, a knockdown, or like a 10-8 damage.
Dominance, yeah.
Yeah.
However we want to define
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Dude, I'm so glad we're not the ones making the rules. Because
Dude, I kind of want to be the ones making the rules now.
I wouldn't
think
mind
this
having
is
some
good.
input on it, but I wouldn't want to be the
I don't
the
mind.
end of it.
I you know what I do think? I think I should be the end all be all deciding of this.
I wouldn't mind that. I'm gonna throw a curveball.
Problem is that you'd have to I thought about man, I'd like to be a judge. I wouldn't want to be a referee.
Really, I'd way rather be a ref than a judge.
Oh, good. Then I'm glad we're different people. I wouldn't want to be a referee. Too much in the spotlight, and it's dude, when does a referee rarely gets credit? You know what I mean? Like a fighter goes out and does their job, credit. A cornerman goes out there and assists their fighter in doing their job, credit. A coach trains a fighter to do their job, credit. A ref goes out there, refs a good fight, does their job, standard, baseline. Now they go do bad, there's no
upside.
There's no upside. It's either it's regular or it's down.
And this is where you and I are such different people, dude. And that's why, I mean, dude, for so many reasons, that's why you and I are great complementary coaches. What was I going to say? Oh, do you have anything you want to add about being a judge?
Oh, whereas not like being a good judge. Someone's like, man, he's a great judge. Right? Because and I think I get that with refereeing as well. There shouldn't be a way to be great. You don't want there to be a way to be a great ref or a great judge.
The way you should be a great ref is that no one even notices you.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Same thing with being a great judge. And you don't want to be known as a great ref or a great judge because that means that doing the job right is above bar.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean?
That should be standard.
What it should be standard, right? Mm-hmm. It's just being is just not making mistakes, right? So now you're baseline and you want baseline to be very easily attainable so that way we can provide proper judging and reffing for all the events and all the fights that are going down.
Yeah.
So there's not credit involved, but I often thought dude, how sick would it be to be a judge? You sit cage side, you get to watch fights. How many times have I talked to you we're at fights and I'm like, man, we should go to some fights that we're not coaching.
Yeah.
And just sit in some chairs and enjoy them, right? Because I haven't got to do that since 2000. I may have. You know what? February 23rd, 2008. That was the last time that I did. That's not a UFC or a WC event.
Yeah.
Which in that case, I'm up in the nosebleeds, bro. I've never been close.
The last time I think you and I got to just watch fights as fans, we did the boxing events.
Yeah, at the Rivers Casino. It was a month after I fought there.
Right.
Angelo, Made Men, hooked me up with some sick seats for that. Yeah.
And that was so fun.
Dude, it was so fun just to be But I want to do it from MMA because I like MMA.
Yeah.
Dude, I love boxing. I appreciate boxing.
Let's do that sometime.
But I love MMA best. And I would love to, but it's okay, justify it. Justify driving out to if it's a local show, what are the odds one of our fighters aren't on it? Right? Slim to none. Yeah. All right, justify driving out of town to watch, dude, especially where we're at in our lives, with all the weekends we're gone anyhow.
It's let's add another weekend of travel.
You want me to explain to my wife that I don't have to go to this, but I'm going for fun?
Dude.
Dude, good luck. I'm taking I'm coaching 40 out of 52 weekends a year. I can't take another one. But I would it'd
be fun.
I like to think of it.
Yeah.
I like to think about it and sitting close, getting cage side seats and just taking it in. But if you're a judge, that's just all you do. Well, you have to be dialed in. So there is some drawbacks to you can't just have a beer and enjoy it. You have to be dialed in. But you're right there and you have no dog in the fight. You know what I mean?
Really just get to
you just take it in and you provide this service, you know? And that would be kind of cool. But in order to do that, I immediately was well, I can never do it because that means I have to quit coaching.
Yeah.
And not only, I would have to quit coaching.
Yeah, and coaching is way better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just coaching is way better, and I'm already in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Dude, I think when we're in our 80s, we should just go to a bunch of local MMA.
Maybe that's what I'll do when I retire.
Yeah.
But I'll probably have to do it somewhere else because we can't do it here.
Dude,
Like,
the
if I were
cycle, the turnover of fighters is so fast, it won't matter.
It is so fast, but like the turnover of coaches is not. Here goes what's going to happen. We're going to retire, and then our former fighters are going to be the coaches, and you don't think I'm going to have like an affinity towards their fighters, right?
I mean, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Dude, so, like,
Whatever, dude. We're way off topic.
I would like need to like retire to somewhere else and do it down there. Like if like I wanted to retire to Hill and Head,
Yeah.
then I could hop on the South Carolina Athletic Commission as a judge.
I see what you mean. That'd be fun.
Because
You're saying as a judge. I was just talking about like just as fans. We show up. And
Oh no! Oh, as fans, no, yeah, you can do that. Oh, dude, I'm talking about judging.
Judging, gotcha. Yeah,
That
yeah.
way, I wouldn't like you know
Right, be
I would need to
partial.
get away, and I would try to be as impartial as possible. But like sometimes you root,
Yeah, it is what
sometimes
it is.
you root. Yeah.
Let me ask you one more thing that's kind of off topic. It's tangentially related. What are your thoughts on the way that Pride scored, where it wasn't round by round, it was just at the end cumulatively?
So I really like that, and we have that happening in jiu-jitsu, whereas where it's just one round in jiu-jitsu, and maybe that would have a benefit to it as well. Like that takes away those scorings of like, oh man, the first and second round were so close, but the third round was dominant, but we already gave the first and second round to the other guy, even though he barely won it. Is if you just don't have rounds.
Yeah.
Just go, okay, here's a match.
Yeah.
You know, like in wrestling, like we could just do in jiu-jitsu, we just do, hey, it's a 10-minute match.
Right.
You know, what if we just did like, you know, a 10-minute fight?
Now, so I used to actually really love the 10-minute first Pride round and be like, dude, why do we even have rounds? I've gone the other direction though, because in my mind, what makes it entertaining is the fact that like there are people who can keep a really high pace through the whole fight, and when you take rounds out, that's just not going to be the case anymore. You know what I mean?
Are you kidding?
Not to the same degree as if you get rests.
No. To even a further degree. You see, I think you get more finishes because you see people break more.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm saying, like, let's say you and I have a crazy striking exchange, right? And obviously, towards the end of 5 minutes, that's going to just slow down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Then you get a minute to recover. Now we're right back at that same pace, and we're going to get to sustain that longer. So
Yeah,
we
but
get,
so is your opponent.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying is, then we get these really exciting fights. We might get 15 minutes.
No,
of
I
fast-paced
disagree.
action.
I disagree. You know, like it's really exciting when you have one fight. Imagine you got one fighter operating at 80%, and then the other fighter has been beaten down to 50%. Now you that like for example, like currently with guard passing, like one of my strategies is, you know, like to go in and just rip through a guard. I probably have to be maybe like first off, you either you know, like maybe it was like a timing or like I don't want to say got lucky, but kind of like
Right,
I
yeah.
caught this one. Like it's not going to happen a lot, right? So like it's like a war of attrition. It's kind of like hand fighting in wrestling,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm out there, I'm pulling, moving, getting my setups, moving the feet, and then like over time,
They make a mistake at some point that you can
either
capitalize
A, you
on.
make a mistake, or B, you just can't react as fast as anymore.
I see what you mean. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So like and
Right.
then but later on in the match, bam, there it is, right? So it's like that war of attrition, and I do that a lot with passing, where it's just like I'm side to side motion, hitting knee cuts, toriandos, coming into the body locks, and like you're able to retain guard, and then like I wear on you, and then all of a sudden, this same guard pass where you were able to retain, you just break, and now I've got my pass, you know. And then after that, imagine I got my pass right away, right? Okay, you're still got fresh and full of fight. I had already worn you down with this passing structure, so when I get that pass, if the pass came later because you were able to fight, now you're halfway broken already, and you'll see that with fighting. I think and you watch these guys, the Rotolos.
Yeah.
Like the Rotolos, dude, like you put them in long matches, dude, like it's just like you know what I mean? Like the techniques that that they have a chance at working right away, but they work late.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
It's like, and we see it in wrestling too, right? Like it's like, oh, dude, you just break them.
Yeah, so that's how I initially used to feel about it, and that's why again I love that 10-minute Pride round. What I think I've come to like believe is that you can still do that, but you have to do it with a higher pace. So let's say we have a 10-minute round, and you break me down, or we have a 5-minute round. You're starting to break me down. We both get back up to 190 or whatever we want to say we get back up to. Now you can continue to wear me down, but you are doing it at a faster pace than as if we just continued. You know what I mean? I think at least from the entertainment aspect, I think that makes it more fun.
Yeah, I guess is from the entertainment aspect, and I think that is one thing that like lends itself to MMA. that jiu-jitsu and wrestling are trying to do, jiu-jitsu maybe a little better job, is we're leaning into the entertainment.
Yeah.
Whereas like, okay, like for example, if we were to use jiu-jitsu, what's the purest form of jiu-jitsu?
No time limit, sub only.
No time limit, sub only. Horrible to watch. So we make a concession, right? We make a concession. Okay, well, we want this sport to progress, so we got to concede some of the purity of it, and then okay, we throw a time limit on it. All right, but now a lot of these matches are ending in draws. Okay, well, then we either throw judging on it or a scoring point system, right? So you got to make concessions for the entertainment. Right. But if you go back to the purity of it, one longer round is more pure than 3 5-minute rounds.
For sure.
3 5-minute rounds favors the striker.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
big time.
Yeah.
Big time. I mean, as I just told you, what it may take for an athlete to get past a guard to a dominant position, right? Time. And a lot of it, right? You're telling me, like, I don't have that much time. Like, I don't have that much time. Like, if you go watch black belt matches that have submissions in them, right? I bet you the majority of the submissions happen in the second half of the match.
That would make sense.
Right? The second half, the majority of them. Now, do some happen early? Absolutely. But the majority of them happen in the second half of the match. Okay? What you're doing is you're taking that second half away.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, oh, reset, restart.
We have another first half.
Yeah. I mean,
let me ask you this then. Would you be more in favor of that if rounds started where the last round ended?
Yeah, I'd be more in favor of that, although I think that's weird.
It is weird.
I think it's just too weird to actually do.
Yeah. And going back to the concession for entertainment, it does take a lot of that away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is interesting. That made me think about, I had this, when I was in college for kinesiology, we had a history of sport class, and they talked about like the original boxing rules, and it's like, do you know how like the original boxing worked? Oh, dude, it's super cool. So the idea of like toe the line or get to the line or whatever.
Yeah.
They had 2 lines. You and I both start toe on that line.
And whoever stepped off it lost?
No. We start boxing, right? And the round is until one of us gets dropped.
Yo, that's crazy.
And the rounds go indefinitely until someone can't get back to the line in a certain amount of time. So you would have these fights that would go on for like, 8 hours, and we're both like pretty much dead. You know what I mean? And obviously that's a way more pure like sport because it becomes much more objective. But like I remember, this is like 10 plus years ago, but I remember reading in this class about like police shutting down certain fights because they're like, yo, you guys are getting a little wild.
That's so crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
That's horrible.
It is, but also like, can you imagine if you're deep in the fight and you're like, no, dude, doesn't matter how many times I get knocked down.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So like,
but I can also recognize how terrible that is.
Right, and at a certain point, we have to make concessions for safety and
why I think it's so terrible is because I would ruin myself.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I need people to protect me from me.
All fighters do.
Yeah. I think that's why I'm like, whoa, like, holy crap, because like I'm gonna keep stepping on that line until like I really can't, and if I really can't, like I'm not gonna
something's
quit,
wrong.
Then something's wrong, and it's gonna have long term.
Exactly, and that's how we got the modern boxing, rules, which I think are already still a little barbaric in some ways. But anyways, yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. But going back to it, so we can talk about rounds another time. I think I kind of like the idea of scoring a fight cumulatively.
I like scoring cumulatively. Yeah. I think it might be attractive to the audience, like more fan friendly, maybe easier to understand.
Yeah.
Like this 10-point must system. It's like you just tell somebody, oh yeah, like title fight, they're going into the fourth. Oh yeah, he's up, 30-27, yeah. Or you're going into the fifth. Oh yeah, he's up 39-36. Right? And it's like, okay, that means he won 3 rounds and he won 1.
Oh, but one of those was a 10-8, so...
So now we're... Yeah. Mm-hmm. Whereas cumulative scoring, and like you can take the 10-point must system and turn it on its inverse.
Yeah.
Right? So like a 10-10 round is a 0-0 round.
Well, hold on, before we dive into that... Well, actually, no, I think we've kind of wrapped up. I think that within the 10-point must system, I think that what you outlined is really how it should be. I think that a 10-7 should be what is kind of currently called a 10-8. A 10-8 should be a dominant... winning round, and a 10-9 should be a round you won.
Right, yeah.
I think that would be the best way to do it. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see that. But
no, I don't think so either.
Okay, but now we're getting to something super interesting, and you discussed this on another podcast.
Did we discuss it on the podcast?
We started to get into it a little bit, and when you said it, I was like, dude, this makes the most sense. But if we got to just, start from fresh and we're like, hey, not like scoring criteria, but just scoring points wise. How should it be?
Listen, it should be cumulative on the way up. And now here I got a great example for you. People were cutting up clips of the end of the year recap podcast, and so like I don't like to watch the podcast back because I'm like, oh dude, you're such a dork. Like that's how you sound.
Yeah.
So I don't like it. So, but I'm listening to some of the clips though, and like we're talking about Max Jarrell, and I was like, yeah, we go to the third. He's up 2-0. Like that's how everybody refers to it too. Like all cornermen. Like I can't think of an example of a cornerman, and I can think of many, 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 many examples that support my argument, but we don't go, oh, I think you're up 2018.
Yeah.
We go, oh, you're up 2-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you're up 3, third round, you're up 3-0. Like, you know what I mean? Like so let's score it like that.
Yeah.
And now what that does some cool things. So, it allows for like those split rounds to also like be apparent. You know what I mean? So like at the end of a round, if 2 judges scored the round for blue and 1 for red, well, the blue's winning 2-1.
Oh, I see what you mean. So each
judge assigns a point,
and that counts as a point overall. Even in that round.
Even in that round.
I like that.
Yeah. So like if you win the round, you scored 1 point. So, but the score wouldn't be 1-0. If every judge gave it to you, it's 3-0.
Yeah. But it could also be 2-1.
Now, it could also be 2-1. It could also be, let's say that judges 1 and 2 gave you what we would formally call a 10-9 round.
Yeah.
So now you have 2 points, 1 from judge 1, 1 from judge 2. But judge 3 was like, dude, that was a 10-8. There's your 2-point round. Now you're 4-0 after 1,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And then like it accumulates up. And it like, it's just like, so then it's like, okay, when you see someone want to fight, 30-26, like that was a whooping.
Right.
That means that was 2 regular round wins and a 10-8 round. You see a fight 30-25, you're like, wow, I can't believe that fight. Like how you get 2 10-8 rounds, right? You know what I mean? Now, like, the end score of that would not be 30-25 because it's the same across the board. So I just feel like it doesn't as highlight the whooping that was on the scoreboard. And then like, for example, okay, what was the score? What was the last minute? Shoot, give me a title fight that happened to a decision in the summer.
In the summer. Oh, man, now you're asking me to remember on timelines. I'm not good with that. Let's think about it. Izzy and... Or no.
Okay, here goes one.
Izzy and Strickland.
I think that happened recently enough that you already remember the score. What was the score?
I don't remember, to be honest, but I think it was... I want to say it was 50-45.
So 50-45, right? Now, under my scoring system, right, it would be 15-0.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he whooped him, right?
Yeah.
And that's what a 50-45 is, right? Let's take a 3-round fight, okay? You got a 3-round fight that would have been scored 30-26 across the board, right? Oh, 30-26. That sounds like a whooping. You know what else that is?
9-0.
Dude, no. That's a 30-27. It's 9-0.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
30-27. It's 12-0.
Yeah.
Dude, he beat him 12-0.
Yeah.
Right? So then you get these close fights, these split decision fights, right? All right. So, all judges agreed. First round blue, second round red, third round blue. All right, 6-3. It's like, oh, okay.
That actually sounds pretty close.
Yeah, it sounds pretty close. But then you can get scores that are like 5-4.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, you gave him the first and second round. You gave him the second and third. He gave him the first and second, and him the third. You're getting scores like 5-4 and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Dude, I think that's such a
that like really illustrate like the closeness of it, or really illustrate the whooping. Right? Like, dude, he beat him 12-0, dude. Like,
now,
geez, 12-0. When your standard win would be 9-0.
Right. So, okay, let me ask you this then. If, or like, 8-1 or something.
8-1, and then you're like, oh, okay. So it's still unanimous decision is what it would be read as. And no one would remember that score. They just remember it was a unanimous decision. But if you read that unanimous decision out as 6-3, it was a 6-3 unanimous decision, right? Because, like, it's the same thing. So, like, you ever hear of somebody go, man, that fight was close. It should have been a split decision.
Dude, I hate when people say that.
Irks
I
me to
hate
hell.
that.
You can't say, under the current scoring system, you can't say, man, that fight should have been a split decision.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that you think the judges should have disagreed with each other.
Yes.
Right? If you think the fight was that close, right? And you were like, yeah, I thought Red won round 1 and 2, but lost round 3. But I think someone else should think that Red won round 2 and 3. You know? It's like, no, dude, like you want some, they should, Judge 2 should think differently than Judge 1. That's what I think. No. You just want to say it's real close. You just want to say it's real close. You don't say it should be a split decision.
Yes.
Right? It should be a very close unanimous decision. You know?
Like 100%.
Yeah.
That drives me crazy.
Up a wall.
Yeah.
With, should have been a split decision. No, you're just trying to say that it was a very, very close fight. But guess what? All judges agreed that, yeah, the first and second rounds were very close, and they were very closely won by blue, and the third round was very closely won by red. Right? And that's a unanimous decision. It can be closer than split decisions. You know? Yeah. So you get that, right? Like, and you get a 2-1, you know, and it would be a unanimous decision. It's just a 6-3.
Right.
You know, split decision, guess what? That same split decision is still just a 6-3. You know?
I
There's
love
no
that.
difference. And like that illustrates, that was a close fight. You know,
Yeah.
6-3, that was a close fight.
And I also like separating the judges kind of allows things to
I think
be
it
a little more
also
fair.
easily allows for you to potentially implement open scoring. Because now you can have a scoreboard that counts up and the crowd can understand it.
Open scoring, I think, should absolutely be a thing. Hold on, while we're still talking about the cumulative points, in your system, in your dream system, would we still have 1-point rounds, 2-point rounds, and maybe
And
even
3-point
3-point rounds?
Yeah, so the 10-7, what is the difference? 10 and 7, 3.
Right.
So 3-point round, let's just count it up cumulatively.
So
That's
we're going to
3.
say that's a round that could have been stopped.
Dude, if
10-7.
all 3 judges thought that was a 10-7 round, you scored 9 points that round. And we're already talking about a 30-26, right? A fight that would be scored 30-26 being a 12-0 fight,
Yeah.
right? You scored 9 points in one round with a unanimous 10, all judges agreeing the 10-7, right? And it just like turns it on its side and lets you
Yeah.
count up, and it just makes it easier.
I think, dude,
know?
I think that's just a
Any
win-win.
judging mistakes that we see are typically due to the 10-9 must system, like, you know, like trying to hurry through it,
Yeah,
right? Whenever Demetrius Johnson, Ian McCall, the fight that should have been a draw,
Right.
but was marked as the win for one of
DJ,
them.
I think.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Or I think it was Ian actually. Actually, you know what? I can't remember. Let's
Yeah.
forget about that. But it was marked as the win for one, which should have been a draw. And if it was announced a draw in the cage, it would have went to a 4th round. But instead, they had to rematch the fight because it was the semifinals of the inaugural flyweight tournament for the UFC title, right? So that's why there was supposed to be an overtime round right there. Like, and it was accidentally announced as a win due to doing the 10-point
errors.
must system math wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
So, okay, I think what I'm trying to get at is this. When we were coming into this, we kind of already discussed a little bit about like cumulative points, and I
Yeah.
just think that's such a better system. I love it. You made some really good arguments when we were discussing wrestling. I think it's solid. But I was going to kind of argue that I think there should be more tie rounds, more 0-0s. And I was going to...
Well, you can still have this.
Right,
You can
yeah,
still have
yeah.
a 0-0 round.
But what I'm saying is I was going to argue that we should just have 1-point and 2-point rounds, but I think you're right. I think it should be a 1, a 2, and a 3-point round. I think that makes
Our
a lot
new
more sense.
10-8, our new 10-8, where someone got dropped, established enough damage, got dropped, got mount or back, that got mount or back without an opposing counter.
Right.
Right. So what I'm saying is, like, if I got mount and you got back, we're back to talking about a 10-9 round
Yeah.
or a 1-point round.
Right.
Right. I have to have it more than you have.
Exactly.
Right. So that would be a 2-point round.
Yeah. And then also having
A
those
1-point
3-point
round
rounds.
would be what you would, this guy, hey, blue won.
Yeah, edged it out.
Yeah, 3 is like almost finished. Should have been finished, almost finished.
Dude, I love that.
And then you can still have the 0 for like,
Yeah,
wow, these
super
dudes,
close.
like we walk out there and we just stand and stare at each other and protest.
Yeah.
Right?
Or
You know?
like Namamunas and was it Esparza? They had. Do you remember that fight? Did you
I
watch
remember that fight.
Oh, that was terrible. But yeah, dude, I think your system is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, scoring wise. And then obviously judging criteria. That's a much longer conversation.
Now here goes what we get into though, a little bit of talk about penalties though.
Okay, I like this.
Because under my cumulative system, penalties take a different note. Because when you currently lose a point right now, it has a dramatic effect.
Yes,
And I don't think all fouls are created equal.
I agree.
But yet they are assessed equally. Whereas like it literally takes 3 points off of you.
Yeah.
You know, one foul, it's like, okay, each judge has to deduct a point.
Yeah.
So if you foul in a fight, you have to, and want to win it and are going to win a decision, you have to win all 3 rounds.
Yeah.
If you foul, lose a round, and win 2 rounds, it's a draw.
Tie. Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's too harsh.
I agree. And I think in your system that makes sense, because then even if the ref like messed up and he's like, up, taking a point, you still, you know, could be up by 1 because that's 2-1.
It would be like taking a third of a point under the current system.
Exactly.
Which is, so it's not as dramatic. And like a ref could be like, you know, like, and I think they'd be more willing to take points then.
Yeah.
Because it's not as dramatic. So like maybe on the second low blow, right? You're like, dude, that's a point, right?
Yep.
Whereas you'd warn them again because you know how serious that point is. That point plays, and you don't want to make that dramatic of an effect on the fight, right?
Dude.
Second fence grab. But if a point is only taking away 1 of your 3 points,
Yeah.
it'd be like right now if the judge was like, oh man, I got to take a point. Hey, judge 1, remove a point. Judge 2 and 3, don't ignore it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I didn't even think about that going in, but I think that's
So it's
so much
it
better.
lends to cumulative scoring.
And it makes reffing so much easier, because then it's just like, okay, like all these fouls, you get 1 warning and then you get a point.
1 warning, point.
Yeah.
Like boom. And so you're more likely to throw these, another eye poke.
Yep.
Right? Like maybe look at, I do like instant replay on those to make sure that.
I agree. I think they should be able to use instant
Yeah.
replay and keep the fight going and everything. Fence grabbing, you know what I mean? That's a huge
fence grabbing,
one.
which dude, like, part of me thinks you should be allowed to grab the fence.
I think either A, you should be able to grab the fence as much as you want, or B, they got to put it in plexiglass.
I mean, dude, because like, I grabbed the fence a couple times.
Hold on. I got to tell a story about your career, because one time, and this, there have only been a couple of times in a corner where I've like really lost it. This was one of them.
This was bullcrap. I tell you what, though, it did work out because at least he didn't take a point.
Yeah, but
I didn't deserve anything.
first off, you didn't grab. Okay, so what happened was Mike was fighting in CFFC. Do you remember which fight it was?
Yeah, it was Del Bruges.
Okay, so Mike was fighting John Del Bruges. Big fight, and very important in your career. And at one point, Mike was kind of sort of starting to get taken down, and he posted on the fence. And I watched this back, and it was 100% a post.
Yeah.
And you are allowed to do that. You just can't grab the fence.
Yeah.
And, I don't even think did he finish takedown? Doesn't really matter.
And they were saying
That's
that's
right.
why he didn't finish the
He
takedown.
didn't finish the takedown.
But on the one in question, so he called me on it, right,
Uh-huh.
and stuff like that, and I'm like, dude, I'm not grabbing the fence. I'm posting on it, and I'm gonna post on it.
Yeah.
You know, and then the one that he put me down on was when I posted on the ring post. I was on the
Dude.
cushion ring post. You can't grab it.
Yeah.
I posted on the ring post, and he was like, grab, boom, and he started me. And first off,
That's not the rules.
Not the rules, but dude, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna take it this time instead of a point, though.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna take it. And then started me in half guard. It's like, how do you know we would have landed in half guard?
Right.
Which, by the way, I'd rather be there than guard, so I'm gonna take it.
Yup.
But I let Del Bruges hit me like when on the restart. I didn't defend. I like threw a hissy fit, and I let him hit me like twice. I was like, go ahead and hit me. They want you to win anyhow. Is what I said. Like I threw I broke mentally for a second and threw a hissy fit, and then I was like, oh, never mind.
But dude, I remember that ref starting you in bottom half, and I was like, that is arbitrary. That's like not in the rules. That's not how this works. Dude, yeah, grabbing the fence I think is a weird one. I think the idea is that like they don't want someone to grab and then twist
And
like,
hold.
Yeah.
Grab and hold. But like, dude, like I challenge you to put your hand on the cage and like your fingers are gonna go through.
or toes.
Toes.
Toes
Like,
is much more natural.
Yeah, like I mean, dude, I can't even bend my fingers back enough
Yeah.
to keep them flat. So they're gonna like protrude through, but it's not a grab. But they'll count this as a grab.
And again, I think that either A, they should just make fence grabbing legal, which just changes the sport a little bit. You just have to like clear hands.
You know what's
differently.
not illegal? My heel going in it, my
Right.
elbow going
Yeah.
in it. You know, like getting some of like my butt cheek in it. Like you know what I
exactly.
mean? Like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah, dude, we're
know?
just talking about varying degrees of friction at this point. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah. It's just very yeah. It's like okay, now my back
Yeah.
is in it, and like, oh, why didn't I just slide down it like a slip and slide? Because I'm like
Yeah.
gripping on to it with my back. You know? It's
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, yeah. So again, I think either
Off
totally
topic, but yeah.
legal or fighting plexiglass. But again, we're getting off topic here. So yeah, dude, I think that not cumulative. I think that additive point system is way better. Actually, I saw Tyson Chartier suggested something. I think it was when So Rob Font or Calvin Kattar lost a relatively close fight, and I think it was he added each score individually. And so like if one judge you added his scores up, and then the next guy and the next guy, each one
Ah,
individually had him winning, but like round by round it didn't work out that way, or something along those lines. But I think what you're saying fixes that, where each judge is allowed to give a point,
yeah, you can either score it 0, 1, 2, or 3 for your round,
and then we
depending
get
on depending on criteria.
yeah, and then we don't have to worry about split decisions. It's just it is what it
Yeah,
is.
it's just points, right? And then like, if you still have a draw, then you still have a draw, in which draws would probably be more likely. There's more of a chance of a draw now.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Because like the judges now have more freedom with their scoring and
Which I'm okay with, because think about
I think it's going to be real. I mean, it's going to be rare, really rare. When I would say the most common score is going to be 1 point per round. So that means that there is going to be 9 points given in a fight. So that's why a draw would be rare,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because like a competitive fight would have 9 points assigned to it.
exactly.
Whether it be 5-4, 6-3, 7. Like it could be any.
But with that said,
combination in there.
I like am more drawn towards the idea of fights it being okay that a fight ends in a draw. And I realize from a fan perspective, it's like, oh, this is such a letdown. There's no like definitive end to it. But I maybe it's just because I'm getting closer.
I mean,
to these
dude, if we
fighters.
want that, like, let's put like I'm also in there being no draws allowed. You fight another round,
Yeah.
overtime, baby.
Yeah.
Like a football game, overtime, hockey, overtime,
Yeah.
baseball, extra innings,
Wrestling,
basketball,
yeah.
overtime, wrestling, overtime, or well, freestyle wrestling has criteria, which I like better than overtime. That's another topic, another podcast.
But I think overtime actually makes plenty of sense. And
Yeah, dude, every other sport has overtime. Man,
Yeah.
let's run some overtime. Let's run some OT. If you manage to be tied after 3 rounds,
Yeah.
especially under the cumulative
Yeah.
scoring system, then that fight was close enough to. It's going to be rare. I mean, how many draws do you see anyhow?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Run the overtime, dude.
Actually,
Right.
maybe draws.
You
would
could
be-
even make overtime like a specific thing. Like for example, like overtime. Like let's take college wrestling, right? College wrestling, 3-minute first period, 2-minute second period, 2-minute third period, right? Up until 2 years ago, overtime was 1 minute. It doesn't have to equal it. So like you could be like, all right, 3-minute overtime.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh man, I've never thought about this in this way before. I like this.
Yeah. I mean, that was the point of this. Just think
Yeah.
about it differently.
Dude, well, hopefully someone in an athletic commission or high up is thinking about this as well, and they're like, oh,
Dude, here goes the thing. To make the change is it's like nearly impossible.
because you would have to.
You're dealing with, I don't know how many. I think how many states are not sanctioned right now. Do you know? I have no idea.
No idea.
I
but-
think there's some that aren't, but I think there's only
Well, let's just say
very
that
few.
all the states are sanctioned. They have their own, athletic commission.
So let's just call it 50. Like just even though I know
Yeah,
it's not
right,
50,
right.
but just to make it easy for the argument, like the change
You'd have to get them all
and to get everybody on board, like
and retrained.
retrained, and like it's like how do you even like do that?
Honestly, at that point, it might be easier to just be like, all right, we're gonna do the same thing, but with the 10-point must system. That might be more digestible. Although at that point, why not? If you're
Why
doing
not? I think cumulative scoring. I think I'd rather see cumulative scoring going up inserted before the criteria of the round. Like if you had to choose, so we listed
yeah.
new criteria. I think cumulative scoring before the new criteria.
Dude, I'm not even necessarily in favor of new criteria. I think it just needs to be.
Well, I mean, like our 10 of the criteria we outlined that we
Oh,
like.
I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking
Like
about
if you were like, okay, Mike, one of your things is going into effect, cumulative scoring or your new criteria. I'm gonna be like cumulative scoring.
Really, I would go the other way
Why?
because I think that having that differentiation between the 10-9, 10-8, 10-7 round is more important
Yeah, so I'm making the concession for the fan, as we talked about earlier.
in order to get the points going up.
Get the points going up. I'm making the concession because I think once you get the points going up, right, and then we see how that's more digestible. It's offering better scoring for fights. You are now more open to the new criteria.
Yeah.
And just like what did the NFL do, right? Like they clamp down on defense to get more scoring because
Yeah.
clearly scoring sells, right? You know what's going to get more scoring? The new criteria, because now you're getting more 10-8s and more 10-7s. So those are now in the cumulative scoring. Those are now more 2-point rounds and 3-point rounds. they're gonna adapt. They're gonna be more likely to adapt that after. If you had to do one before the other,
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
and if you wanted one to help pull the other,
Yeah.
it's gonna be cumulative first.
I could see that, yeah, because then you're just like, hey guys, we're just adding one more point, as opposed. Well, I guess it's kind of the same thing, retraining for 10-7s. But yeah, no, I think you make a good argument
and
there.
I think cumulative is an easier switch too,
Or
because you're
going up
not
is what you
changing.
mean.
Yeah, cumulative scoring, like going 0 point rounds, 1 point rounds.
I was looking
2
at
point.
cumulative as like the whole fight, but yeah,
No, cumulative.
additive.
I mean,
pointing. Yeah,
the whole fight is cumulative.
right. I mean, the scores at the end would be added together cumulatively.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, cumulative. If you're gonna do it, you just do it going up, because you don't want to be adding. Okay, this person won now 90 to
Yeah.
81.
Yeah.
That would be a 3-0. That would be winning 3 rounds to nothing.
Right.
If you did it cumulatively on the 10-point must system,
Right.
90-81,
Yeah,
like, you
that's
know what I mean? Like,
ridiculous.
now you're getting into some real, like, I had
that's,
doing that 27 times 3 real quick. I was like, oh no, what is it?
yeah.
You know?
You see some boxing scores sometimes, and you're like, dude, I don't know.
What does that mean?
Yeah, how many rounds is this?
110 to 101. What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that and open scoring I think would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in my order of like what I would choose the point structure going up instead of 10-point must first. Then I would choose open scoring second, and then the looser criteria for how you judge a round third.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be my order of operations.
That sounds pretty spot on. Pretty spot on.
Yeah.
And linked in there, I assume, with the points going up is the judges being separated point wise, right?
No, I don't know what you're talking
So what I'm saying is, like, if you had the points going up, but they use the same system, where, like, let's say there's 3 judges and 2 of them give it, 1-0, and then the other judge goes 1-0 the other way.
Yeah, it's 2 to 1.
That's what I'm saying. Is that as opposed to being
Yeah, that's
now it's
cumulative.
1-0.
Their points go together.
I see
right?
what you're saying. I was looking at it as a
Yeah, each judge can assign points to a
as being the
fighter.
pride style.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I think that's a great system.
yeah,
I like that order of operations.
yeah. I think that would be work really well. Maybe we should.
Petition the PA State Athletic Commission.
No, you know what we should do? We should see if, like, maybe on like one of the local cards coming up, if we can just have all the scorecards at the end, and then redo the math on it, right?
Yeah.
And be like, all right, well, this fight would have been scored a 9-0, right?
Oh,
like,
that's
take all the
interesting.
30-20s and be like,
Yeah.
okay, this was scored 30-27. It would have been a 9-0.
Right.
Oh, this fight finished in the 3rd round while this person was up 2 rounds. Okay, this person came down from 6-0
Right.
and got a finish to win.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
No, that's
Yeah.
cool. We should maybe do that.
Yeah.
Share the results.
Yeah, I'd be like, okay, this is what it would have been, right? Like, now instead of Jake winning by unanimous decision, no one knowing what that means, you're like, okay, Jake won 9-0. Okay, Tom won 6-3. And it kind of like gives you a
8-1,
more of a feel
whatever.
of how competitive the fight
Yeah.
was, or how not competitive the fight was.
And if you have a score of like 1, so like 8-1, then it's like, oh, well, one of those rounds was close.
Well, one of those rounds was at least enough that another judge gave that person a
Right,
round.
which you would
Right.
assume means it was close,
Yeah, so that means that, like, under the current system, it would have been 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. That's 8-1.
But what I'm saying is, in the current system, it could also be 30-27, even if one of the judges gave one of the rounds to another guy.
No, that it couldn't have been. Then it would
One
be
of
a
the
29-28.
Oh wait, no, I'm mixing systems.
I just
yeah, you're
named
right.
I just named 3 judges: 30-27,
No,
30-27,
yeah.
29-28.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, your system's better, dude.
It's better.
should
It's
do it.
better. It's more fan friendly. It's easier to do. Easier to put on a scoreboard. It's cool stuff, man. People, we love points in America. All right. Well, you got anything else to add?
No, I think we covered the scoring system pretty well, and
Right on. All right. So, shoot. I hope I get credit for it whenever this change goes into effect. They should name it after me.
the Wilkins scoring method.
That sounds kind of clunky. Maybe you can just...
Well, we'll figure out some alliteration.
Yeah, there we go. All right, guys. This was this episode of Listen to Your Coaches. We'll see you again next time.